from Citizen Health and the Team Academy IAPS ME Connect, and today in the series of People's Health It Matters, we have again Dr. Liaquat Roopesh Johnsons, who is a professor in Department of Community Medicine, Azeezia Institute of Medical Sciences and Research, Kollam, Kerala. A very warm welcome to you, sir, on behalf of all the audience.
Good afternoon to you, and pleased to be here sharing space once again.
And truly I said that I feel very happy whenever you are with us, because it is always a very interactive session with you. So without wasting any more time, I just wanted to everyone know that today we are going to talk about the stress in the workplace. As we all know that what is stress and all. So we focus with only one question, that how to deal or how to manage with that stress, if the stress in the workplace. Is it right, sir? No?
So I'm going to address this in three parts. So the first principle is to know your job. The second is to know your co-workers. And the third is to know what you can control. So if you look at the first principle, which is know your job, that actually is a considerable cause of stress for a lot of people. What do I mean by this? The first thing that you need to know is what are you expected to do as part of your job. You all have a designation. You need to know what your roles and responsibilities are. And you also need to know what specific skill sets you need to have. What are the activities that you will need to perform? And you need to see whether you probably have these skill sets or not. So if you don't have the skill set that is required for a particular job, you'll obviously be very stressed. The other thing is to know what exactly is the extent of your job description. What is it that you are supposed to do and what are the things that you're not supposed to do? So many people don't know what they're not expected to do, and they may take on more than what they're supposed to do because they don't know it. So somebody else may be supposed to do something else, but you don't know it. And so when they come and approach you with a request, you say, okay, fine, I'll do this also. And then you're stuck with more work than you legitimately should be doing. So knowing your job, that's very important. So before you get into a particular designation or a post, you must definitely know what it is going to involve. And especially if you're going to get a promotion, you should know what additional responsibilities you'll have to shoulder. How will it be different from whatever you were doing so far? And particularly for those people who are switching jobs, you should know how the work environment of your new establishment will be different from your previous environment. So you may be moving from, say, not-for-profit to a corporate setup, or vice versa. And in that case, you should know that the work environment and the work ethic will be different. So you need to be aware of what exactly to expect and what you have to do. So once you know that, it is easy for you to work on acquiring those skills. If I am a person who has, as part of my job description, if I'm expected to regularly contact people from the media, I need to have excellent communication skills. But if I am someone who doesn't have those skills, I will really stress out every single time I need to interact with the media. And I definitely need to work on those skills over time. And when I get better at it, I will obviously experience a reduction in my stress levels. So that's the first thing, know your job. The second thing is you need to know your co-workers. So your co-workers would be both your superiors and your subordinates, as well as those who are at the same level as you. There are different kinds of co-workers, and you need to understand what kind of people you are dealing with. So if you know how they operate and you know what they like and what they don't like, it will be easy for you to avoid getting into conflict situations with them. A common mistake that I observe is when people who are generally nice, decent people and reasonable people, they are dealing with unreasonable people. They expect that the unreasonable person will also be reasonable. What you need to remind yourself is that that other person is not you. So you can't expect them to behave like you. An unreasonable person will not behave in a reasonable manner. There are some people who are more emotionally driven than by logic. So if you try to reason logic with them, it's not going to work. But then there are some people who just need a little bit of an ego boost. So if you massage their ego, they're very good, and they just need you to pander to them a little bit. So there was this one person who I worked with, and he had a little bit of an insecurity about certain things, and really, liked to have somebody praise him. So every once in a while, a colleague of mine, if he was late, would walk into the office, and you had to sign the register, attendance register there. So if the person started saying, "You're late, and this is not acceptable," etc., my colleague would immediately switch and turn on the charm and say, "Sir, what nice shirt you are wearing today. You're looking really handsome." And that would be the end of it. After that, "Oh, really? I'm looking good." Okay. So that worked with that person. You may not always have somebody who, responds to flattery, but you should know what works. Some people are very methodical, they are very punctual, and they do not tolerate any kind of delay. They are very specific about what exactly they want and in what shape and form they want it. You have to try and understand the exact specifications of the task assigned, and ensure that you give them what they want. If you give them something else, you probably will be in trouble. That will cause conflict. So you will be in stress. So know what that person wants and how they operate. You will have to talk to them in their language. Once you know that, then it is easy to deal with them. So that's about, know your coworkers. So before I go on to the third principle, if there is any specific query which may have arisen in your mind, then you can ask, and then we'll settle that and then move to the third principle.
Okay, from first principle that know your job. If I know my job, if I know my responsibilities, but if additional responsibilities given to me, that is not my part of job. So what should we do in that situation? Like if I know that I need to just teach and anything, anything
Okay,
else is not
so
required.
yeah, so that's a common thing. The general rule is that good work is rewarded with more work. So if you are somebody who does good work, you will get more work, and that's understood. Now, what should you do? The first thing is you need to always try to develop a team. I mean, it's I would say that it does kind of feel nice to say that I can manage all this stuff by myself, but eventually it gets too much. So rather than trying to save the world by yourself, trying to be Superman or Superwoman, you should try to develop a team, and you have to cultivate, you have to mentor a team which will actually help you with fulfilling those tasks. So you can always then transfer some of the responsibilities. So there'll be always some things which only you can do. Only you have the knowledge or the expertise to deal with. But there'll be a lot of things which are not so technical, which are not so demanding. And those things you can easily pass off to your team. And you say, okay, you do these things. For example, you need to prepare a list of some items. You can always ask their secretary to type the list. You may have made the list, but you can always ask the secretary to type it. You don't have to do it yourself. So wherever possible, try to delegate responsibility to somebody else. And this is something which you can always do. If you have a superior, let your superior take a decision which is difficult for you to take. Okay, request that person that I'm struggling with this. Could you please help me with this? And if you are the person who's on the top, then you can always seek for advice from other people. You can always call for a group of experts. You can have a committee, and you can discuss within the committee, and you can say, well, these are my concerns, this is the situation, and this is the background. In this context, what do you suggest we should do? Take a collective decision. You don't have to be the only person who's dealing with the problem. It is not necessary for you to do that. And wherever there is somebody else who can do something for you, and it is not that only you have to do it, in that case, you can give it to someone else. Basically, handle the work that comes your way efficiently. only do the stuff which you exclusively have or can do. Okay. Everything else, try to give it to somebody else.
Okay, and my second question is from the second principle, that know your co-workers. There are many people who are very like chocolatey in front of us, but very thorny in back of us. How to seek that kind of people, or what to do with this kind of peoples?
Okay, now these people are manipulative people. Some of these people are, so you should try to understand the motivation. Okay, a lot of times these people behave like this because they are very insecure, and they don't know their job. They are incompetent. Okay, they know that they're incompetent, they know that they're ignorant, and they know that their position is vulnerable. And because they do not have the skills, because they do not have the competence, they seek to make themselves relevant in other ways. So how do you make yourself relevant? You try to be the person who gives all the gossip to the boss. So the boss will then depend on you. So the boss is likely to ignore a lot of your incompetence because you are serving a different purpose. Okay. So you need to understand what is motivating them to behave like this. Sometimes you might be dealing with a narcissist. Okay. Uh, there are different kinds of people who really try to bully other people. They don't really care about others. They only care about themselves. So people who are selfish, self-centered, I mean, you need to carefully observe them and try to figure out whether the person is genuinely a not nice person, or is the person otherwise okay but is acting like this because of something else. So if they are otherwise okay, it is maybe because they are trying to camouflage their own inadequacy. They may not have the strength of character to acknowledge that I don't know this. I don't know how to do this. And if you know that, and you know that this is what is driving their behavior, you might be able to somehow work out a middle path where you say, okay, shall I help you with something? Okay. A lot of manipulative people actually back off when they realize that they cannot manipulate you. And if you tell them, either through indirect means or you directly tell them that you are on to their game, then generally they will back off. So it's basically about seeing which way you need to go. Every institution, every office will have somebody who's not so nice to work with. That unfortunately is the reality of the workplace, and you have to live with it. So I can't obviously give specifics, but in general, I think you need to identify who you're dealing with, what kind of person this is, and what is driving them. Once you know their motivation, it becomes easier. So you have to carefully observe them for that, and let them know that you know what they're doing.
Okay, sir. Please continue with the third principle.
Okay, so the third principle is know what you can control. And this is very important because once you know what all is directly under your control and the extent of your influence or your power, then you just have to accept that you cannot do beyond so much. This is all I can do. Anything beyond that is not in my control. I cannot influence or decide the outcome in any way. So let me just do the best I can with whatever I can control. Whatever I can decide, let me do the best job with that. And the rest of it, anyway, I can do nothing about it. So let me just leave it, let it be, however it happens. Hopefully it will turn out good. But even if it doesn't, well, I did my best. So you need to accept that you can't determine the outcome. You have only so much control over every situation. So accept the limits of your control and influence and live with it. Most people, they agonize over what will that other person do, what if that, what if this. That is where a lot of stress happens. Don't brood about things which you cannot control. And one other thing I'd like to point out is that a lot of people immediately go to the worst possible scenario and say, okay, this is the worst scenario. Okay, and they think that that is what is going to be true. But I'd like you to think of do an exercise every single time you're faced with such a thing. Think of the worst possible thing that might happen. If everything were to go wrong, what is the worst possible outcome that might happen? And also think of the best possible outcome. And then you say, okay, if this is the worst possible thing, what do I need to deal with the worst possible thing? Is there something I can do to minimize the effect of this, minimize the impact of this? Is there something I can do to somehow soften it. I cannot change it because it's not in my control, but is there something I can do to soften the impact of this thing? How, or I can't do anything to soften it, how will I deal with it? Okay, think about these things and then accept that it is going to be just as bad. But you should have done your work. Okay, you should have said, okay, these are the things that can go wrong. This is how I am going to deal with it. Make up your plan and then let go. Don't worry about it after that. And then you see whether it, how many times out of 10, it actually gets as bad as what you imagined. And most often you will discover that it doesn't really get as bad. Most of this is in our minds, and generally people, find that things don't go as bad as they imagined. A lot of times you also have the situation where, you assume certain things. I would say don't assume anything on anybody else's behalf. You may not be on good terms with somebody. You may be having certain anxieties about how a certain person respond. Ask that person. Don't go to a third person. Directly go and approach that person and see what happens. I think that's the better way of going about it.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. It was really very interesting topic which we talked today. Thank you so much. I hope कि सब लोग इसको सुनेंगे. Please share this video with everyone you work with so that everyone can deal with the stress in the workplace. Thank you so much, sir, once again.
Thank you for having me. My pleasure to share my thoughts on this.